Okay.
All right, we are live. Good evening, everyone. This is Shane Trammell, and I'm live tonight with Cory Klippsten, founder and CEO of Swanbitcoin. Super excited, Cory, to have you with me tonight. I'm looking forward to getting your perspective on the macro environment with regards to Bitcoin. And actually, tonight, with you here on the show, I've already, put this out on Twitter, but I've, announced that I've, finally gone Bitcoin only. My path was 8 months ago, getting started with Dogecoin and all the things, and maybe we'll talk about that some. But I made the decision probably about a week ago. I sold all of my altcoins, and I'm 100% in Bitcoin, and it was a journey for me. So thanks for joining. Cory, I'm just going to go ahead and let you share what you want of your background. I know you were at Microsoft and Google and a lot of places, and all of that, I'm sure, was preparing you for what you're doing now with Swan and some of your venture capital work. So I'll let you introduce
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Shane. Really appreciate it, and that's great news. Glad to hear another convert to the cause of Bitcoin. It's great. And yeah. As you note, hindsight is 2020, but uh, it does seem like I'm using a lot of the experience that I gained from what otherwise would have felt like a winding fits and starts path across a lot of different places to get
Right.
here. But there's bits and pieces of all of it coming to the fore in what I'm doing now. From starting my career as a pretty terrible broadcast journalist, and then getting into work at Microsoft, and then Morgan Stanley, and going to business school, and getting into fundraising and management consulting at McKinsey, eventually going to Google. And then, yeah, as you know, I've been in startup world for 8.5 years now, writing checks to early stage venture-backed startups and advising early stage CEOs. And then, falling down the Bitcoin rabbit hole in the last bull market, starting in spring of 2017. So I'm about 4.5 years in, which is crazy. Not even 5 years yet. Totally
Yeah.
not an OG. Absolutely empathize with the story that you just told about getting pulled in by crypto, and then sort of going through the learning process that it takes. You did it faster than I did. It took me 11 months. It wasn't until
Sure.
March or April of 2018, after getting involved in May of 2017, that I went Bitcoin only. And so hopefully that's a one data point that says it's getting easier. And I think
Sure.
that dovetails with what we're doing, because we're really trying to shorten that cycle for people and get a lot more good Bitcoin education out there. That's been the mission of the company since day one. And in a lot of ways, selling Bitcoin is kind of ancillary to the mission of educating people about Bitcoin. We just think buying lots of Bitcoin from people you trust is a byproduct of delivering really good education about Bitcoin.
Sure. Well, that's great, Cory. Well, my it was about 8 months. I went and looked back. I started back, I think, in March. Somehow or another, Dogecoin, as it just happens to be, came into my purview, and obviously I knew what Bitcoin was. My background is in IT, so it wasn't a new thought or something that I had not heard of. But I was just busy, like a lot of people in my career, and of course, that got me. I estimate I've spent about 300 hours, in that 8 months, reading the Bitcoin Standard, listening to that, multiple times, watching videos of you and so many others that are in the space. And I did the math for one. I'm kind of like a math guy. Plus, of course, I started, looking into Austrian economics, and even at 55, it's kind of crazy to think that. And I'm sure you can relate to this perspective. I think about, since I have kids, I know you do, that they're not learning these kinds of things in school. And, we could go on and on just about that. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is, I know that you were on, and I just happened to be around and listen to it as well. The infamous now Twitter Spaces with Mark Cuban on Saturday. I know there's been a lot already talked about it, so I really have one particular question about it, and you're welcome to share other perspectives. But it was my feeling after listening to that, and I'm sure it's not only an issue with Mark Cuban, but with not only even billionaires, but it doesn't seem like they get the bigger picture. Why many of us have decided to go down the rabbit hole and to see Bitcoin as a solution. My biggest takeaway, and then let's talk about that with regards to Mark Cuban, was that he looked at it as, what will customers do? In other words, is the next deal going to be, it's going to be whatever people will use, whatever is easy. And then literally just today, I found out about the article, if you want to call it that, The Speculative Attack by Pierre Richard.
For
I'm sure
sure,
you've
yeah.
heard of that. And, I don't know if he coined the hyper Bitcoinization term, but it just hit me like a ton of bricks when it basically said in that short article that it's not about mass adoption necessarily. It's about, at some point in time, if we believe it's going to happen, that people are going to be forced to using Bitcoin because no one will want their fiat money. And so I guess my
Yeah.
question is, do you have a similar sense that many of these billionaires and others are looking at this in the wrong way, and maybe because of their own privilege, regardless of whether they came from humble beginnings? I know that Mark Cuban likes to point that out, and I think that's great and that's awesome. But I think it's also possible to maybe forget that there are many, many people, not only in the United States, but in the world, that don't have that privilege, never will. And arguably, Bitcoin is a once in a life opportunity for them to protect their wealth or to grow their wealth.
Honestly, I would slice through all of it. And, at its root, it's just a very simple misunderstanding that he has around the difference between sound money, which is something like Bitcoin that has all the characteristics that you would want in a money, and essentially what is kind of like a 2017 new crypto VC framework around what I would call a friction token or an app token, which is like the Chuck E. Cheese analogy, or the poker chip analogy in a casino or something like that. And he thinks that you need to stockpile these chips to use in the casino or to use in the playground where there's going to be these apps. And that's not something that people actually want to hold for the long term. If you need to use an app and it requires a certain kind of currency to do that, you're going to buy it very quickly, spend it. If you end up with more, you're going to sell out of that into the sound money, the best store of value. So just game theoretically, like over the mid to long term, these friction tokens or these different apps that require their particular currency to use just don't win. They can't win. Monetary networks trend toward one, network protocols trend toward one. Bitcoin won that race a long, long time ago. We're just watching people wake up to that fact little by little.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that perspective. And I know for me, and I think it is related to what you're saying, and we're all different. And maybe some of that is my age, my generation, and I'm welcome to admit that. But I actually hate the idea of having to have Ethereum, having to have Solana, having to have all of these tokens to transact with all of these apps that they're coming out with. And that's actually a detraction for me. I would be much more likely, to use those types of platforms, if you will, if it was, let's say, Bitcoin, or maybe still even fiat, as long as we're still earning and transacting to a certain extent in fiat. So I may be a minority in that, and some of the old Bitcoiners may feel the same way, but it
Yeah.
really
I mean, the
is
good
not.
thing is you don't have to use them. There's no
Yeah.
reason, there's no natural demand for them, because the only use case for all this stuff right now is speculation. It's speculation on these speculative assets. So it's kind
Right.
of like a snake eating its tail. Like there is no retail demand for any of this DeFi stuff. The retail volume is like 1 or 2%. It's all just crypto trader funds, crypto funds, just like moving stuff around and pumping their, VC bags, whatever. But like
Sure.
there's no reason for anyone normal to use any of this stuff unless they're speculating.
Right. You know, another thought that I had the other day, honestly, having finally decided to, and um, I was very, very close to going Bitcoin only, if you will, several months ago. But, looking at the possibility of obviously having altcoins do a 10x or whatever, and, buy more Bitcoin, because we never have enough, that type of thing. But, with the hodl mentality that I have, and I think, Swan as an app, as a platform, facilitates that, would encourage that. Although you can buy obviously as much you want on Swan anytime you want, but dollar cost averaging, um, is very easy on your platform. But it's actually been a weight off of it has reduced a lot of stress. I'll be honest. I think that maybe a lot of people get into that when they're looking at all these altcoins and other things. Looking at it daily, hourly, maybe even more often. Again, nothing wrong with that, but I feel much better knowing that I've made, I believe, a very informed decision that Bitcoin is, the way to go with the store of value. Eventually, maybe a more common medium of exchange. So, in talking about that, I'm curious. As using Bitcoin as a medium of exchange, do you believe that? Let's assume that we're not even to a hyper Bitcoinization, I guess, world yet. Do you believe that it would be that we would be more likely on a larger scale to use it if there wasn't the tax event, if you will, to spend it, and obviously the fact that it keeps going up a lot. You don't want to spend. I use the example. I'm not going to go. I wouldn't go sell a portion of my house, to go get a hamburger. That doesn't make any
Mm-hmm.
sense. Same thing with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, the tax treatment of Bitcoin and what you're talking about is that there's capital gains tax. There's a taxable event because your property has appreciated, your Bitcoin has
Yeah.
appreciated versus the currency of the land, the US dollar, when you spend it. And so you've got to pay taxes on that. And that's super annoying to account for, especially when you're thinking about small purchases. And there is no allowance for that, not a $600
Yeah.
allowance, not a $9,999 allowance. Like there's no allowance for it. So it is annoying under the current regime. And then, the other reason is, as you know, it doesn't make much sense to spend Bitcoin if you have anything else not nailed down that you can spend, because it's the expectation is that it will appreciate in purchasing power over time. So the only people that actually want to spend Bitcoin are people who, bought Bitcoin long enough ago or in enough size that they don't have much else. 90
Right.
or 99% of their net worth is in Bitcoin, and they're looking to spend it. And so that's what's going to drive both Bitcoin as a medium of exchange and enough people with enough power and enough voice to get regulations changed so that it's not taxed when you spend it, or there'll be some kind of allowance or something like that. Both of those happen once you just go through more cycles of growing the price and more people having more of their net worth in Bitcoin. Because
Sure.
I broadly, most of us are thinking about it as this is an accumulation phase. Very
Right.
few people were in it before 2013, have been through two cycles, which is that's probably what you need to have understood Bitcoin pre 2013 and plowed a bunch of wealth into it
Yeah.
to have it be substantially all of your net worth today.
Right.
So people that are getting in now, like if you got in last year and you really believed in it and you bought a ton of Bitcoin, in the 7 to 12K range or something like that, and then you keep
Right.
buying as it goes up, keep buying over the next 6 years, 8 years or whatever, by 2030, it's going to be all of your net worth, and you're going to be looking for ways to spend it. And you're going to be more vocal. Like a small number of people are vocal about the tax stuff today, 100 times more people will be really vocal about that by the end of the decade, and they'll get
Right.
things changed. We might get things changed after the next cycle, because that will be, there were 10 times more people in 2016 than there were in 2012, and maybe they have enough political power to get some laws changed. I think by the end of the decade, it's almost certain, because you're talking about people that came in last year with Paul Tudor Jones and Michael Saylor and all the great institutional and, the amazing education that you've been benefiting from.
Yeah.
Pierre, for instance, having a much bigger voice and a huge Twitter following, and Safe's book came out in early 2018. Stefan Livera's podcast started in 2018. I mean,
Yeah.
Pomp's podcast started in 2018. Peter McCormick's podcast started in 2018. Like, most of this education is from then. Like, Swan started early 2019. Like, this is all pretty new,
Right.
helping people get in faster and understand Bitcoin only a lot faster.
Right. Well, that's great. Another thing I wanted to ask, and you actually kind of led me into it. I have it written down, but you reminded me of it when you mentioned, the percentage of someone's wealth. Um, do you see it as a problem for someone that's convicted, heavily convicted with regards to all the things about Bitcoin, all of its attributes, that they're, let's say, 90+% of their liquid assets are in Bitcoin?
Do I see it as a problem?
Yeah, I mean, do you think that someone should be more diversified? I think I actually know the answer, but I'm just curious, if that would concern you, if someone's, has the mentality that they can wait for 4, 5, 10 years, 15 years before they need it in any way.
The advice I always give is like, only buy Bitcoin that you'll never have to sell.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
that's what you should do, I think. And then, so if you're pretty wealthy and 10% left over means that you have a couple $1,000,000, then it's totally fine if you
Sure.
have $18 million in Bitcoin, not to mention
Right.
that you probably bought it for 1 or 2 million bucks and now it's 18, and that's just kind of how this thing has been playing out. I don't think there's very few people that are gonna, have like 400 grand. It's not a lot of cushion in today's inflated society,
Right.
and put 360 of that into Bitcoin. That
Yeah.
would require insane levels of conviction. Some people do
Yeah.
anyway. some people
I
some
mean,
people end up like 120% Bitcoin because
yeah.
they take a mortgage out on their house and buy that into Bitcoin too. So,
Yeah.
I think it's just commensurate with your level of conviction and understanding of Bitcoin, like
Right.
how comfortable you are. But you really need to know that you're going to be able to hodl that and not sell in a panic. Otherwise, you end up being one of those people at the whims of the random walk, and you probably
Sure.
end up buying high and selling low if you don't plan well.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll at least say I'm convicted enough. I know, obviously, as they say, history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. I know that anyone that's held Bitcoin for at least a year has not lost any money. If you hold it for 4, you're even much better.
There's plenty of people that have held it for a year and lost. The 4 year
Well,
thing
they
is
sold it at
true.
the wrong time, I guess. But right. Yeah, good point. So I know at least the 4 year, but
Yeah.
I got started late, 55, and literally just again, you know, 3 or 4 months ago, took an IRA, put it all into Bitcoin. I mean, I'm 90+%. I'll be 65 in 10 years. I'm fine with that being, living within my means or whatever, because I think of, and I'm sure you do as well, I think of legacy. I have kids, like I said, I'm sure that they'll have grandkids. I'm spreading the word as much as I can with, those that can get started earlier than I can. And, this kind of leads into the next question that I have. You've really kind of already said, only only buy a Bitcoin that you're willing to never sell. So the question I have that's really related to that, there's kind of a two-pronged question in my mind, but again, if you're never going to sell, there's got to be a way at some point to monetize it. So is the thought that, there are borrowing platforms today. I know a lot of the problem with a lot of those platforms where you borrow is you don't have your keys, right? You don't have your coins. I think there are some ways that you can, but most of the ones that we know about, Celsius and Nexo and others, I think you can borrow with BlockFi. You don't really own that Bitcoin. You don't have it. So, at some point, let's say you're someone like me, 55, you're 65, and you've got, if Bitcoin goes to 5 million a coin within 10 to 15 years, if you've got even one, two, three, or four, that's still a pretty good amount, but you have to continue to live some way or another, right? And let's assume
Mhm.
we're to the point where the dollar's so inflated that it doesn't buy hardly anything. I'm just curious, your thoughts on a strategy. I won't call it an exit strategy because I would
Mhm.
never, to your point, want to sell all of it, but at some point I might have to take advantage of that savings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, unsecured loans are a product that have been around for a long time. And if you can verify that you own assets, there are plenty of rich people that don't actually hand over the collateral, the shares, the stock in their company, like whatever it is. They can take out
Right.
gargantuan loans against their assets uh, just by asserting and having a third party verify that they actually own these things, and they can take out
Hmm.
massive loans. Like you don't have to hand over the Manhattan apartment building to be able to take out a loan against it, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that market will develop over time, and Bitcoin is such a great, as they say, pristine collateral. I expect that when you post Bitcoin as collateral by the end of this decade, instead of paying, maybe like 7.5% as an institution and 10 or 11% as an individual to take out a loan against your over collateralized, posting the Bitcoin as collateral. That's where the market is today. I expect that to be like sub 1% by
Wow.
2030.
Yeah.
So if you actually post the Bitcoin, maybe you have a key and they have two keys, or you just hand it over completely and they've given you some fiat to
Yeah.
spend. So you didn't have to sell your Bitcoin, but you have something to live on. I expect those rates to be just like minuscule. It'll just
I
compete
mean, on
down to
Celsius,
nothing.
yeah, on Celsius already, and I'm not saying pro or con because they're not Bitcoin only, but with the loan to value, basic,
Not being into Celsius has nothing to do with being Bitcoin only. I just wouldn't trust them at all.
yeah. Well, what I was they're 1%. Maybe they're 1% because you can't trust them. I'm just saying your point. I think we're already there, but maybe not to the level of trust that we would be comfortable with. So I guess I'm just saying, by way of example, yeah, I know you can already get a 1% loan there. So the other side of
That
that
might
coin,
be for like a way over collateralized loan. Like,
it's a 1 to 4. So in other words, for every
yeah,
dollar you
makes
want to
sense.
borrow, you have to have $4. I'm just putting it in
Yeah.
dollar terms because that's the easiest way
Yep.
to think of it.
Yeah. They say
You can have
25% loan to
less,
value.
but the loan to value ratio,
Yeah.
if you are putting up less collateral, it jumps up to 6 or 7%. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Yeah, makes
um,
sense. Yeah, I
yeah,
think Abra has it free. I think for 20% loan to value. So 5 to 1, I think, is 0% because they make a
right.
bunch of money by taking your Bitcoin and loaning it out to crypto funds and market makers and short hedge funds and stuff like that.
So I don't know as much about Abra. Is that a retail thing as well, or is it just for institutions?
It's similar to Celsius. It just has like
Okay.
a better founder that you can actually trust.
Okay.
I don't use either, but I would just not
Okay.
touch
I get
Celsius
it.
with a 10-foot pole.
Sure. Well,
Um, but yeah, I think, I that's probably what will just happen. But also, like by that time, Bitcoin will have appreciated a lot. And if you have, substantial net worth in Bitcoin, like it's not going to be that big a deal to sell a tiny bit because it's going to be
sure.
a minuscule portion of your stack and it'll buy you
Right.
a lot of stuff.
Sure. Well, again, related, I've got two other questions that are related on the other end of that. I guess borrowing, do you believe that it will be more commonplace to be able to earn a yield and again still have it in a way where you can trust that the coins are still yours? I mean, I know that's, the ultimate for any Bitcoiner is to obviously make sure that your coins can't be taken or that you
Yeah.
actually own them. And so, again, on most platforms where you can earn yield on Bitcoin today, you don't own your keys, at least the ones that
Hmm.
most people know about. Do you think that's
Yeah.
another
I
development that
mean,
will see
to
next
lend
few
out
years?
my Bitcoin to somebody, to me, like I don't know. I mean, I think the fair rate for something like that would be like mezzanine lending. It would be like mid teens to low 20s or something like that. And so when they're paying like 1 or 2% pre tax, makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah,
It's just really bad risk reward.
I see what you're saying. Yep,
It's like
yep.
one tenth the interest rate I would require to actually like hand over my Bitcoin to
Right,
somebody.
right.
I
Yeah,
just
that
I
makes
just
sense.
think, I don't think that these things have been stress tested in a crash. Like they've all come out basically since early 2018, and they don't know what it's like when Ethereum drops 95%, Cardano
Right.
drops 99.8%. and this whole DeFi world is like way more cross collateralized, way more over leveraged than anything we had in 2018 in that crash. So, it's very likely, it's very possible that there's some really nasty blow ups, and I just don't want anybody to be holding any of my coin as that stuff all starts to fall apart.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. One of the other things I wanted to ask that has to do with, again, kind of my journey to where I'm at now, having decided to go 100% Bitcoin. This concept of Bitcoin maximalist for someone like myself early on can be very intimidating, so I'm just curious your thoughts on, do you think that label is, good, bad? Could it be different? Do you think that there are, some maximalists that are more intimidating than others? I guess I'm just saying, how can we, as a maximalist in its best possible light, be, to where we don't turn people off and hopefully get more people to embrace Bitcoin versus move away?
I mean,
now,
it's
of course,
it's a false frame, right? It's a
Yeah.
false frame. It was a pejorative term coined by Vitalik Buterin, an enemy of Bitcoin, to lob against Bitcoiners and call them maximalists.
Right.
And some were just like a lot of people beset by a pejorative term were like, what, forget that. We're just going to own it, make some hats, make some memes, and just have some fun with it. And then a bunch of essentially scam marketers latched onto that and tried to pretend like that was a thing because a few Bitcoiners said, what, we're just going to have fun with this term. At the end of the day, like, it's just so irrelevant. It's a nothing burger. There's a bunch of like engagement farmer, wannabe influencer podcasters and Twitter people, trying to take one side of the issue or the other. And it's just as completely irrelevant. Doesn't matter at all.
Right.
I'm a Bitcoiner.
Sure. Well, that makes me think of another thing that I saw on Twitter today. Someone that's, I don't think, a Bitcoin only individual. Not that matters. I'm just trying to frame the question. I think they're very pro Bitcoin, but not exclusively Bitcoin. But they basically said that they had talked to 10 different crypto platforms. I can imagine which ones they were, and that they were investing, basically millions and millions of dollars into athletes, into teams. And I'm sure you saw today that Coinbase announced that they are the official, crypto platform for the NBA and a number of others. And this is not a hit on them. I'm just trying to use that as an example. I know that your approach at Swan, at least based on what I have observed now, obviously is different. And I heard you talking the other day on a particular video about who you have found tends to promote the platform more than others, with regard to the type of, you mentioned it, influencer or podcaster, YouTuber. There's obviously different types, but it seems like you have a different approach to marketing. I know part of that's education, but can you explain a little bit your perspective on marketing and, if you see that continuing to be your approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have just taken the approach of using content as our marketing. So we just try to put out really high quality educational content and hire and work with lots of people that are really good at explaining Bitcoin, really good at reaching out to different kinds of people and helping them on their path and helping them on their journey into Bitcoin. And, enough of those people develop a trust and affinity for us and see that we have fees like much lower than Coinbase app and Cash App, and they choose to buy with us. And that's enough to sustain the venture and grow it. And then that funds more hiring and more education and better engineers to build cool products. And we just kind of keep expanding the ecosystem of what we build for Bitcoiners, because we build products and services for Bitcoiners, right? So we have the website, which makes it really easy to set up those automatic recurring purchase plans. And then you can wire money if you want to make a large buy, and you can buy one time with ACH. Now we have an app coming out, which does all the same stuff. We've got Swan Advisor Services, which is basically recognizing that a lot of clients have a wealth manager or an RIA or something like that. And a lot of wealth managers have clients that they want to onboard and be able to see across their different clients and do rebalancing and things like that. So just kind of like selling in all these different ways. But now the next generation is creating. So we've been doing media for 2 years and creating podcasts and newsletters and things like that, and that's kind of an ongoing sort of factory of distribution and production. And now we're also building other products that Bitcoiners want and need, like Bitcoiner Jobs. So it's the largest job board in the space, and something like 30 or 40 companies post all their roles there, and hundreds of people have found jobs with Bitcoin companies through that. We're rolling out Bitcoiner Gigs, which is being able to post your own services for sale. Like, I'm a personal trainer, or I sell beef and ship it overnight around the country, or whatever it is. You can have your services for sale.
And the idea behind that is to get paid in Bitcoin?
No, just to get paid. You can transact however you want. It's just kind of like it's like a Craigslist or a Yelp or something like that for the Bitcoin community. Bitcoiner events, similar. It's like a global events platform where we're going to have all global online and offline events, conferences meet up in one place. And then you can, promote and ticket your own events through the platform as well. So just kind of over and over, we just want to be the Bitcoiner company that builds great products and services that are loved by Bitcoiners. And and the only way we monetize is selling Bitcoin. And, so I think the more people that are kind of around and know what we do and build trust and relationships with us and our extended ecosystem, the more we sell.
Sure. That's great. Well, you, in your bio, I know you mentioned that you are an advisor to Unchained Capital, and I'm from Texas, so I know they're down in Austin. But the question you mentioned that at least for high net worth individuals, you can help with IRA. I know Unchained Capital's getting into that. Just curious, where you compete and where you're complementary, and I'm curious a little bit about your relationship with them. I mean, I think they're a great company, but I use Swan as well, but I am looking at Unchained for some other things, multi-sig, custody, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of good companies in this space, and they're growing, and there's more all the time. I'm an investor in Unchained. I'm an former advisor to Unchained, and also a client. Like, they have, some of my Bitcoin is in the multi-sig setup with them. So I'm a huge fan. Love the team. Hung out at their office and recommend them often. I think they're maybe a little bit more focused on kind of like the custody solution. That's the core of it. And they built Caravan, and, they kind of really go hard at the custody thing. Some of our customers are super into that, and they'll use, Casa or Unchained or, some other kind of multi-sig setup. Some are just going to use hardware wallets, and they just like have their cold card and, spread their keys across people they trust or whatever. And then a lot of them are just kind of like, you know what, I'm not there yet. I'm on my path, and I'm going to leave it with, our custodial stack. If you don't take it into self-custody, as Prime Trust is the legal custodian, and then Fireblocks is the physical custodian. And some people, that's just their risk model, is that's less risky than them trying to take self-custody in some cases.
Sure.
So,
well, I am curious with the Swan, is it called Swan Private, I believe? Do you, and you mentioned the IRA, I think a lot more people are going to be interested in, as like myself, once they go down that rabbit hole and decide they want to save in Bitcoin, want to take their IRA and move it into that. I use iTrust Capital right now. A lot of things are coming on the scene, so there's a lot of more options. Can you take a client from stem to stern on that? Do they need to have an accountant along with them, or in other words, at what level can you help them? Let's say someone has a 100K that they want to put in a Bitcoin IRA.
Yeah, we have thousands of clients that have purchased or transferred their funds over into Bitcoin through us. All to date with self-directed IRAs, but we're actually launching a custodial IRA as well. So that'll be an option here within the next month or so.
Wow.
Yeah, we've been testing it. A few of our Jan has one. A couple of our client service people have custodial IRAs with Swan now. We just haven't launched it publicly, but it's coming.
So is your preferred approach, or the only approach, to do a LLC, or is it a IRA, whatever they call. I don't know the other options, honestly.
Trust. Yeah, it's either an LLC or a trust, and it kind of
Yeah.
depends on which state you're in, which is the best.
Okay.
Yeah, so
That's really cool.
but we advise on it based on which state you're in, basically, which
Yeah.
structure to set up. But it's really easy. You just go to swanprivate.com and get started.
Sure. Well, I'm at the point personally, and probably others, again, if they've gone far enough down their journey, that the idea of having custody becomes more and more a concern, more and more of something that you want to look at. And as much as I like the ease of the platform that I'm on right now, it is not a self-custody platform. So I'm honestly, looking at my options. And again, I think a lot of other people will be as well. Want to mention real quick and go back because you talked about all these other things that you're coming out with, or which are super exciting. I'm curious about the app for a minute. Is it? Are you going to be releasing that somehow in beta? What's your release strategy on that going to be?
Yeah, we've got something like 500 people in a Telegram group that are our beta testers that we've used before. So we'll kind of do it with like really close friends and advisors in kind of alpha here in the next week or two. And then we'll open it up to 500 people for a month and hammer at it and make sure it's great. And then release it to everybody.
That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's cool. I think the really exciting thing that's going to be in there that's different than what's on the website today is that's where we'll launch formula buys, which is, something we've been talking about for a long time. When we
a little bit
about this.
That.
Yeah, well, it'll be like, we'll create a few formulas and then we'll let people submit formulas. And this is kind of like, if this happens, then do this. So it'll be like, if Peter Schiff includes the word Bitcoin in a tweet, buy $500 worth of Bitcoin, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So we're going to basically let people submit formulas. We'll vet them and make sure that we could code it and that there's an oracle for it that, is kind of automatic, an API basically that we can tap into to make sure that definitely happened. And then we'll let them promote it. And as soon as they get, 50 or 100 people signed up for it, then we'll actually launch it.
Wow. So would that include some type of even if you're, if
it could be like if the Aggies win by $100 of Bitcoin.
That's
something
my
like
son.
that.
Yeah. Would one formula that maybe you're going to include some type of a limit order? Let's say you are on a DCA strategy, but obviously you have some thoughts into where it's going to be, within that week. And obviously you want to get it as cheap as you can.
Yeah, I think we'll get there. I think we need to see OTC desks in the United States do a little bit better job on execution, and the exchanges too. As you've seen, like even Coinbase and Kraken and all these guys will go down with high liquidity because the market makers just disappear from their platform and there's just no bid and no ask depending on what's going on with the price. So I don't want to disappoint people. I want to be able to launch formulas that work 100% of the time.
Sure.
And we also kind of discourage trading. So setting a bunch of limit orders is kind of anathema to what we really encourage, which is just buy and hold. So I kind of want to keep this as fun as possible.
Sure. I get it. That's really cool.
I think so. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, if 1,000 people ask for limit orders and only 2 people sign up for, shift tweeting Bitcoin, then we'll probably have to build it.
I just know me, not at all. I don't necessarily see it as trading, but I know a lot of people could. In other words, if I'm going to DCA, I know I'm going to DCA for the week, or maybe it's a one-time. In other words, maybe I've got a regularly scheduled, and I've got $10,000, to put into it. I'd obviously like to buy that at hopefully a cheaper price than a higher price, in a week. But nonetheless, and that's kind of leads me to my next question. I'm curious. This is a pretty technical question in one sense, but again, I'm a customer, so I use the platform. If you, let's say, have a weekly, you're DCAing weekly on a Friday, does that happen Friday at midnight? In other words, what's the timing of when your order is executed?
Yeah, it's based on when it actually funds. So you can't actually control it. It's based on when the ACH actually hits our side. That's when you get put in queue. So you're not making like one buy per day for all Swan customers. It's happening all day long.
Okay.
7
I
days a
see.
week automatically. Yeah. So it can change a little bit from week to week as well. So if your ACH pull, usually happens in the morning on a Friday, and then sometime, something gets backed up at your bank and it comes over to our side in the afternoon, your buy is going to happen in the afternoon.
Sure. Right. Okay. Another
It's the only
question.
fair way to do it. You're supposed to set it and forget it, swan and
Yeah.
chill. Like, stop worrying about the execution at like 61.3 or 61.1. Like, so
Exactly.
it's the
And
long
so,
game. Zoom out.
right. And I assume, based upon literally what you just said, that you would, I guess I'll say this is not, I should have said this at the beginning, not financial advice. We're sharing opinions, but in your opinion, do
You can give
you,
financial advice about Bitcoin. It's not a security.
yeah. Okay.
I have no
That's a
problem
good
giving
point.
financial advice on
That's a good
Bitcoin.
point. Okay. So in your advice, let's say, again, since your platform is really, based around routine buying, dollar cost averaging, do you recommend someone dollar cost averaging all the way through a bull cycle? I know I plan on doing that myself, but there might be reasons not to. Um,
I mean, I do. I don't care. I
yeah,
just buy every day.
sure. Yeah,
I
maybe
recommend
a
a daily plan, by the way. I like buying every
well, there
day,
you
not
go.
once a
Okay.
week. So,
That's
uh,
that's a really good
yeah.
idea. I mean, I will say the modified approach that I took with one lady that I've been helping, she's I think in her late 60s and just got started buying Bitcoin. But I talked to her the other day. When I originally got her going, she said she didn't have, a certain amount of money. And when Bitcoin kind of started on this, amazing run that it's been on lately, I'm like, if you have $3,000 now instead of doing it over
Mhm.
the next several months, go ahead and put the 3,000 in now, and then lower maybe your dollar cost averaging, but continue
Yeah.
something going. And that was kind of my I guess potentially alternative approach. Why would you
I
not
mean, the way I look
invest
at
the
it,
3,000
I think it's
now?
two different decisions. One is like, do you have a big pile of value that's not in Bitcoin?
Yeah,
You have to decide how much of that to put into Bitcoin. And that's actually that's a trading strategy,
yeah,
right? And people have
yeah,
different approaches to that. I have an approach that I generally use that I give advice to like friends and family on what to do with that amount that you've decided to move into Bitcoin.
hmm,
And then separately, if you actually have income where you know for sure that you're getting X amount of dollars every week or every month, that's where I think you treat it like a 401k or a mortgage, and where you say like that should be your automatic recurring purchase plan, is some percentage of that money that you know is coming in. Because that's like an annuity, or it's like a bond or something like that. It's like clipping a coupon. You can put some of that into Bitcoin and pay yourself in Bitcoin.
sure,
But they're two separate things, and that's
got
why
it.
we have a lot of people making very, very large, multi-million dollar, multi-$100,000 purchases on Swan every day.
Sure,
And they're obviously not dollar cost averaging or doing automatic recurring
right,
purchases with that part, but we
sure,
strongly encourage them to keep buying if they have an income that's predictable and they can keep going.
right. Yep.
Plus it just
Smart
feels good.
world.
Like every day I take a run around this loop outside my house and I buy Bitcoin. I've done a
Right.
lot every day. Feels good.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Mine is weekly now, but you've encouraged me to change it to daily. So I like that.
Yeah.
One of the other things I'm curious about or would like to get your perspective on, what do you see as and I know there could be lots of them, but what do you think is the single best thing that the industry can do or that individuals can do to get that next wave of, people to adopt Bitcoin? I run into people daily that all the objections that I know have already heard, and so we don't have to talk about what those are, but do you have a sense of either a, um, a product that needs to come out? You've got some great products, or a message. What is the thing that we need to do to get that next wave of people to adopt Bitcoin?
I think we're just doing it all the time. I don't think there's like this big glaring thing that's missing. I think it's just the collective efforts of millions of people around the world that understand Bitcoin and try to spread the word. I think that's where the magic
Right.
is. And, Bitcoin's like a rock star.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
all news is good news. If you can be in the press, then it's good for Bitcoin. You know, this is why
Right.
we always like any news comes out. This is good for Bitcoin. Anything happens, doesn't matter. This is good for Bitcoin. It just
Right.
feeds on volatility. So, you know, crisis in the dollar, good for Bitcoin. You know,
Right.
stocks pump like crazy. That's actually good for Bitcoin because people go further out
Yeah.
on the risk curve and they feel flush and they take a flyer on Bitcoin. But if stocks go
Right.
down, a bunch of people are like, well, stocks are bullshit. Let me get into Bitcoin. Like it's
Right.
just the more it can be in the news, the more it can just feed on that volatility. You know, it's like one of those superheroes that, you know, you shoot a nuke at it and it just sucks it up and like grabs all the energy. Like it feeds
Right.
on conversation. It feeds on grabbing attention. So I think all you can do is just provide this like steady growing baseline of educational activity and sort of proselytizing, you know, using code and media as much as you can, but also hand-to-hand
Right.
combat with friends, family, colleagues, social network, classmates, whatever. And then these shocks come, you know, like Cyprus in 2013, like the global financial crisis that was, you know, sort of corresponded to the launch of the thing in the first place. You know, I think a lot of people started looking at Bitcoin, even though in late 2018, the liquidity crunch and everything that was going with the repo window and everything contributed to Bitcoin falling from like 6,000 to 3,000 at the tail end of 2018. It also caught a lot of people's attention and got a lot of people learning all through
Right.
2018 and stacking and
Right.
stacking. And that then fed into the cycle that we're in now. So, you know, price up is good, price down is good. You know,
Sure.
Coinbase does some new thing with altcoins or whatever, brings
Right.
more people in. Like at the end of
Yeah.
the day, it doesn't really matter. It's all good for Bitcoin.
Sure. Well, I want to ask you your perspective on this, and we said we'd go an hour, so we're getting close to that. But I read on Twitter yesterday, I think it was that, and this is in the United States, that registered investment advisors, I don't know, there's like 14,000 of them, and they represent $100 trillion in assets under management, which kind of blows me away. And then the part I didn't see, which made me curious, so I did it. If I calculated it right, that if only 0.19% of that 100 trillion, if they, and there was something that came out where they can now have access to Bitcoin, if they only went out and invested or bought for their clients 0.19% of the Bitcoin, they would consume all of what's on the exchanges. If the number of about 3 million is correct, the numbers
Mm-hmm.
that I see is somewhere around 3 million. I think it even dips into the high 2 million numbers or at times that's available on the exchanges. Now, there are probably other sources if you're high net worth, but generally speaking. So, I mean, that's just crazy to me, right? When you look at that, when you look at if Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, if they decided to go and buy, there's just all of these catalysts that just scare me in one sense, because it's like, okay, we don't have a lot more time, in my opinion, to the average person to accumulate at any level that is going to be meaningful. It'll always be meaningful, but I think you know what I mean. I mean, you're not going to be
Yeah.
a millionaire in Bitcoin terms as an average person if you don't start buying some very, very fast. It seems. I could be wrong, but
I mean, the, I think it's going to be global money. And I think it's going to continue to appreciate in purchasing power forever.
yeah,
And so I think it will always be a good time to buy Bitcoin.
sure.
To front run these institutions and benefit extra from, you know, like it'll appreciate like this. And it may have some steady state where it kind of grows along with global GDP, which I think will be elevated from where we are today. Like we'll actually
Right.
have faster GDP growth in a much more friction free Bitcoinized world where we can all pay for goods and services globally, frictionlessly over the internet instantly at the speed of light with
Right.
Bitcoin.
Stream money constantly or something.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it could be machines paying each other.
Yeah.
Could be trillions of endpoints on this network, not just 8 billion people, right?
Hmm.
So I think all that connectivity will result in much higher growth in the future, and so the purchasing power of the money should expand significantly, even way past the day when we'll say like, okay, Bitcoinization happened. We charged up the S curve. We're at like a much more steady state, less volatile, market cap of 100 trillion or 400 trillion or whatever it is.
Right.
It will continue to appreciate. You'll be able to buy more stuff with it over time. So it'll still be a good idea to store your value in Bitcoin in 2040.
Sure.
There won't be anything as good at it as Bitcoin in the future true. Either. But yeah, this is a moment in time. This is a one first time in 10,000 years that people have been able to go on the internet and learn about something and buy it and front run the global power elite.
Right.
It's crazy. I mean, it's bananas that you and I are here talking to each other about this, and we know something that Mark Cuban doesn't.
I agree, and I did the math, and I don't have it in front of me right now as well. I think there's 50. I don't know. The number of how many millionaires there are, and again, anyway, this leads into the next question. Maybe
they can each have about a third of a Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I mean, my question is, and I think the answer is probably yes, but are there going to be millionaires and billionaires that are so stubborn and wait so long that they literally lose most of their wealth and have to start over? If they don't get in.
No, because their assets will still be worth something in Bitcoin terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll always be able to exchange that for Bitcoin if they want.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if they want to hold Bitcoin, they can. If they still own the Patriots and some buildings, like they'll still own those, and those will still generate income. And they can take that income in dollars if they want, or they can switch over to taking that income in Bitcoin. But they still have capital. And they still have, the ability to generate income.
Right.
Like there's going to be a lot of people added to the wealthy, but very wealthy people are still going to be wealthy.
Sure. Now, to your point, they've got other assets that they can convert to Bitcoin that other Bitcoiners want. I mean, people still will still want Rolex watches and sports cars and, all kinds of other things. So that makes sense. Maybe, I guess this will be the final question for this time. And by the way, I want to thank you again for joining me. I know it's already there in California towards the end of your day. So I definitely appreciate that. I'm just curious if you think, I think my perspective is, at least again in America, that's where we're at. I don't think that, and maybe it won't ever happen, but I don't think that the average American thinks that we'll ever experience hyperinflation like Venezuela or the Sudan or Lebanon or, any number of other places that have. Do you believe that it's actually possible for us to, spiral so bad economically that we would end up in something, similar to that? Obviously, Bitcoin will save those that have it, but I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the likelihood of like Weimar Republic style or Zimbabwe style inflation for the dollar is like vanishingly small. I think it's much more likely that there's kind of a soft landing. And this is something that Nick Bhatia, the author of Layered Money, has written about this. Safety has talked about this a bit, but it's basically that if you look at like supply and demand for dollars, as Bitcoin rises, demand for dollars will decrease, and they can decrease the supply of dollars as well as Bitcoin kind of starts to take a place alongside it. Bitcoin probably, replaces treasuries as the backbone of the global economy, as the global reserve asset. That's really treasuries, not dollars. And the dollars may exist for quite a while. I mean, I think we'll be paying for things in dollars in 2050. I think they'll also be priced in sats, though. Just like if you go to a market in Cairo, you're going to see, probably at least three currencies there. You'll probably see dollars and euros in the local currency. I think you'll be able to buy stuff at Zara in Chicago with dollars or sats in 2040.
Right. Makes sense. I do have one other question that's on my list, if I could ask it, and we'll still get it in under the time. Thought about this today, and I know, based on some of your other videos, and I agree, by the way, with what I'm about to say and your perspective. I know you've, been asked, I think at times, what about getting quote unquote paid in Bitcoin, and again, most of these platforms, they're not directly getting paid by their employer in Bitcoin. It's having to go through something else. So there's still fiat involved. But the question I have, which would be, very related to your platform, I'm seeing more and more people talk about. I just saw a post today on Twitter from someone that I'm connected with that said they were having problems with, I think in this case, Citibank. Last week, I saw people posting about other banks. It seems that some of these banks are starting to throttle what people can take out of their account if they can identify it as some type of a crypto,
Yeah.
if the destination is a crypto platform. So have you thought about, more so because of that, allowing some kind of direct deposit, something like I guess you can do with Strike and a few other platforms, so that people can be assured that part of their paycheck is going to be able to go into something like Swan?
Yeah, I mean, you can do the exact same. I mean, Strike uses Prime Trust as well. It's the exact same thing. So, people are already getting paid in Bitcoin with Swan. We have tens of thousands of people that are doing what you do, where they, decide some amount of their paycheck or whatever is
I didn't know that
going to
you
go into
offered
Bitcoin.
those. Okay.
That's what automatic recurring purchases are. We've been marketing that as get paid in Bitcoin since inception.
Sure.
So
No, I
it's
know, but that
yeah.
comes out through a ACH. So I'm wondering if
Hmm. Yeah, but it's
Citibank
free.
sees that, they
It's a
may be
free.
like, well, but
Well,
they
we've
may
never
say,
had anybody get rejected from transferring into us, so
oh,
it's just been
okay,
a
that's awesome.
non-issue.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. What you're kind of talking about, I think, is like, Strike wants to be a challenger bank. They want to be like a mobile bank, and so they're going after like Cash App and maybe like a Chime or something like that. And so, they're pushing really hard to have you actually open up a bank account at Strike and have your
ACH
paycheck
or
direct, not
a regular
ACH,
number, a
actually have
check.
your direct deposit. So you actually
Yeah.
go to your HR department and change your bank to the Strike bank account. We offer
Right.
that.
Yeah.
It's not very popular. I think our clientele is just kind of like maybe just a little bit more high end or something like that, and just doesn't
Sure.
really take us up on it much.
Right.
But as far as like getting paid in Bitcoin, it's irrelevant the medium of exchange that you get paid in. It's what you store it in that matters.
Right. Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
so like
And
like these athletes aren't actually getting paid in Bitcoin. They
I know.
open up a trust account with Prime Trust, whether it's us or Strike. They open up a
Yeah.
trust account. The money gets sent over. The dollars get sent over to their account at Prime Trust. Prime Trust trading API converts it into Bitcoin, and now they have Bitcoin.
Right.
That's how it
Okay.
actually works.
Sure. Well, that's actually
And it doesn't make sense for a company to contract with someone in Bitcoin because it's too volatile. So
right.
you're giving an employee or a vendor or whatever a free
Right.
option because it's at will employment. If the price of Bitcoin goes way down, they can stop working for you and just walk
Right.
away because they don't like the 0.1 Bitcoin per month that they're getting or whatever, because now it's only
Right.
$3,000 or something. But if the price
Right.
goes way up, you're on the hook for it.
Right. So I guess the
Right.
better thing for a company to do, maybe even if they're a small one and want to be innovative, and if their employees are
Mhm.
saying, "I want Bitcoin," is for them to basically say, "Hey, here's a platform you can use to do
Yeah.
that."
So we do that, right? So we have clients that pay their employees in Bitcoin through us, right? But it's a dollar denominated. They decide like, hey, you're getting $10,000 a month, but we're going to pay you in Bitcoin, and that's distributed
Sure.
via Swan.
Right.
We pay half our employees in Bitcoin, but it's dollar denominated, and then we send them Bitcoin.
Right. So how big would a company need to be? This may sound silly, and I live in a small community, but I'm starting to have businesses talk about this kind of thing. How big would a company need to be in order to work with Swan to be able to do that?
There's no minimum. You could pay one
There's-
employee with Swan. It's called Swan Paycheck, and you can just hit us up,
Okay.
and
Well, I
it's
hate to
easy.
admit that I didn't know that you did that, but I'm super excited that you do, because
Yeah.
I've got a couple of companies in the county here that want to be innovative, and we're not going to have time to talk about it on this stream, but I'm also the president of a nonprofit. I've already got them to approve us taking donations in Bitcoin, but I'm trying to go to that next level where we will actually save, a certain amount of the funds that we're able to get that come in through fiat, so that we can have a, some legacy, if you will, and not have to go or be dependent on grants and all those kinds of things. And I need, probably someone like Swan to help with that. So we'll have to talk another time. I hope that you would consider coming back on another time. I've really enjoyed, Cory, having you on. Appreciate your perspective. I do appreciate your platform. I do want to give you the last word. Is there anything you want to say about Swan, the company, the platform? You've already shared some, but I want to give you the last word.
Yeah. Get in touch, man. We're pretty accessible. I think people think that, we're on Twitter and have some famous Bitcoiners or whatever, but you can DM any of us. We're pretty responsive. I did just launch a newsletter, so I'll plug that real quick. So if you go to cory.substack.com, that's the Daily Bitcoiner. I really like that one because it's we've curated like the top 600 pieces of educational content about Bitcoin from the last 12 years. So podcasts, articles, videos, and you just get one fresh one in your inbox each morning, and it'll be something from 2011 or 2014 or last year. And if you've never read it before, we're telling you like, this made the list, it's worth your time. And if you've already read it before, it might just remind you, and maybe you'll share it with some friends. So really excited about that being in market. We've gotten really, really good feedback on that. And it's something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I just didn't have the infrastructure to be able to produce it until recently.
Sure. Well, I just have to say, I'm subscribed to that, and I don't remember exactly now what it was, but there was a article in there, or a quote that was really helpful to me the other day. So
nice. Yeah, it also comes with a quote of the day and a Bitcoin meme of the day. So
oh, that's right. So I don't know who this lady is. I can't remember, but I had to collect some more of them. I think you copied her memes, and those were really cool. So
yeah, it's really entertaining. Thanks, Shane.
Yeah, thank you so much. We'll have you on again, and I love your platform. Want to tell everyone to go into the description, the show notes. You'll see how to get connected with Swan. We are an affiliate, so we'd love for you to use that if you want to get onto Swan. We use it. I think we're going to be switching to daily based upon Cory's advice. So thank you again, Cory.
It's the same cost. Doesn't cost more to switch to daily.
Okay. Well, have a great evening, and we'll talk another time. All right.
Sounds good. Thanks, Shane.